The massive ship appeared without warning. One moment, Earth's skies were normal. The next, a vessel larger than the island of Manhattan hung over New York City. Its dark metal surface reflected sunlight in strange patterns. Admiral William Carter stood in the control room of Earth Space Command, his face grim. 27 years in the military had not prepared him for this moment. The screens around him showed chaos. His officers frantically tried to make contact with the alien ship. "Sir, they're not responding to any of our signals," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, her fingers flying over her keyboard. "Keep trying," Carter ordered. His gray eyes never left the main screen. "And get me the president." Before Amy could respond, every screen in the room flickered. The image of a tall, thin being appeared. Its skin was pale blue with faint silver markings. It wore what looked like ceremonial armor. "People of Earth," the alien said, its voice oddly musical despite the serious tone. "I am High Commander Zex Toral of the Galactic Hegemony. Your world is now under our observation." Carter felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The alien had bypassed all their security systems like they were nothing. 3 days later, Carter sat in the United Nations building alongside Earth's leaders. Dr. Lisa Brown, the head of Earth's Science Division, sat to his left. Her red hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her face showing the stress of sleepless nights. On his right sat John Miller, Earth's most experienced diplomat. His usually calm demeanor had given way to tense shoulders and a tight jaw. Across from them, High Commander Zex Toral and 3 other aliens sat with perfect posture. Their silver eyes seemed to look through the humans rather than at them. "So you see," Miller said, finishing his carefully prepared speech, "Earth wishes to join the galactic community as equals. We have much to offer in terms of resources, culture, and yes, our own defensive capabilities." Zex Toral's mouth twitched. Then he laughed. The sound was like glass breaking. The other aliens joined in. "Defensive capabilities," Zex Toral said when he finally stopped laughing. "Your metal toys would barely scratch our scout ships." Dr. Brown leaned forward. "Perhaps you underestimate our technological progress. We've made significant advances in..." "In what?" Another alien interrupted. This one wore green armor with gold trim. "In burning fossil fuels. In primitive nuclear fission. In chemical rockets that can barely reach your own moon." Carter felt his face grow hot with anger and shame. The aliens had done their research. "The galactic hegemony consists of 412 advanced species," Zex Toral continued. "Earth will be granted observer status only. You may send representatives to learn from us. In time, perhaps a century or 2, you may petition for associate membership." The meeting ended soon after. As Carter walked out with Brown and Miller, a junior officer rushed up to him. "Sir, urgent message from Nevada," the young man said quietly, handing Carter a small device. Carter read the message and felt a small spark of hope. He looked back at the aliens, who were speaking with the Secretary General. They looked so confident, so certain of their superiority. They had no idea what waited beneath the Nevada desert. In a bunker deep underground, Major San Harris walked through heavily guarded doors. The facility was carved into solid rock, shielded from all known forms of detection. He entered the command center where General Patricia Wells waited. "They're here then," Wells said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, Mom," Harris replied. "And they're exactly as arrogant as we hoped they'd be." Wells nodded and pressed her palm against a scanner. A hidden door slid open, revealing a massive underground hangar. Inside stood 12 sleek ships unlike anything seen in public. Their surfaces seemed to shift and change, never quite settling on one color or shape. "Accelerate the final phase," Wells ordered. "I want all ships ready in 3 months, not 6. Harris looked at the vessels with pride. "Project Phantom is already ahead of schedule, ma'am. The aliens won't know what hit them." Wells smiled slightly. "Let them mock us for now, Major. Their laughter won't last forever. 20 years before the aliens arrived, a small town in Arizona experienced a night that changed human history. A meteor crashed in the desert just outside Willow Creek. The impact wasn't large enough to cause major damage, but it was strange enough to attract attention. Dr. Frank Daniels arrived at the crater 3 days later. He was a quiet man with thick glasses and a mind that worked differently than most. The government had sent him because he was the best at understanding things no one else could. "Keep everyone back," he told the military team. "I need to check something." Frank walked to the center of the crater alone. The meteor had broken into pieces, but it wasn't a normal space rock. Parts of it seemed to disappear when viewed from certain angles. When he waved his detection equipment over it, the readings made no sense. Later that night, Frank called Colonel Patricia Wells. "It's not from our solar system," he said simply. "And it's not natural." "Are you saying it's alien technology?" Wells asked, her voice steady despite the implications. "Yes, and it can bend light, make things invisible. It absorbs energy signatures too. Nothing I've ever seen works like this." 6 months later, Project Phantom was born. The government built a facility under the Nevada desert. They'd brought in the best minds and gave them unlimited resources. Frank led the science team. Dr. Claire Nelson, a brilliant physicist with a knack for impossible problems, joined him. "We're calling it phantom matter," Claire explained to the new engineers. "It doesn't follow our rules of physics." Alan Rodriguez, an engineer with wild ideas that usually worked, studied the material day and night. "If we can replicate this," he said, holding up a small sample that seemed to fade in and out of visibility, "we can build ships that no one can see or detect." For 15 years, they worked in secret. They built small test vehicles first, then larger ones. Each ship had better stealth systems than the last. They developed weapons that used the phantom matter's strange properties. These weapons could pass through normal shields like they weren't there. The first full-size ship, the U.S. Nighthawk, was completed 5 years before the aliens arrived. Captain Olivia Scott took it on its first test flight. "It's like flying a ghost," she reported back. "The Chinese satellites didn't see us. The Russian radar didn't pick us up. We flew right over Beijing in broad daylight, and no one knew." By the time the aliens reached Earth, humanity had built 67 ships. They hid them throughout the solar system. Some were behind the moon. Others were near Mars or Jupiter's moons. All of them were invisible to any known detection method. In the Nevada facility, Major Sam Harris walked with General Wells through a special room. The walls were lined with screens showing data from the hidden ships. "U.S. Spectre reports all systems normal," said a young officer. "They're in position near Venus." "U.S. Phantom is maintaining orbit around Europa," said another. "And the Shadowhawk?" Wells asked. "Captain Bennett reports they're ready," Harris said. "All ships are in position and waiting for orders." Wells nodded. "The aliens think we're helpless. They see our public space program and laugh. They don't know about any of this." "When do we tell them?" Harris asked. "Not yet," Wells said. "We need to learn more about them first. Their weaknesses, their command structure, their technology." Harris looked at the main screen showing the alien ships in Earth orbit. "They're so confident." "Pride comes before a fall, Major," Wells said quietly. "We've spent 20 years preparing for a moment like this. They've spent no time preparing for us." In his private lab, Frank Daniels studied new data from the alien ships. Claire Nelson worked beside him. "Their shield technology is impressive," Claire said, "but it has a pattern. All technology has patterns." Frank nodded. "And patterns have weaknesses." "Do you think our ships can stand against theirs?" Claire asked. Frank smiled slightly. "They don't know we exist. That's our biggest advantage." Outside, the sun set over the desert. Deep below, humanity's secret fleet waited. In space, the aliens continued to look down on Earth with mock pity. unaware of the surprise that was about to change everything. 6 months passed since the aliens arrived. The Galactic Hegemony now had a large embassy in Geneva. Alien officials walked Earth's streets like they owned them. Their ships came and went as they pleased. Each week, they took more from Earth and gave little in return. Commander Kate Wilson did not trust them. As the head of Earth Intelligence's new alien division, she watched their every move. She collected data, followed patterns, and found the truth behind their pretty words. Today, she stood before the UN Security Council with her findings. The room was tense. Several Earth leaders looked nervous. None of them liked what they were hearing. The technology they shared is outdated by their standards, Kate explained, pointing to her display. The medical advances they promised have not materialized. Meanwhile, they've mapped our entire defense network and continue to extract rare minerals from 17 countries. The French representative leaned forward. "Are you certain of these findings, Commander?" "Absolutely," Kate said. "They're studying us while giving us trinkets in return. This is not a fair exchange." Suddenly, the doors opened. Nick Svelor, the new Hegemony ambassador, walked in with 2 guards. He was taller than Zex Toril, with darker blue skin and cold eyes. He didn't wait for permission to speak. "These accusations are beneath response," he said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "But I will address them anyway." He walked to the center of the room and activated a small device. The 3D map of the galaxy appeared, with thousands of stars and planets. "The Hegemony controls 64% of this galaxy," he said. "We have technologies your scientists cannot even dream of. Your species is barely interplanetary. Your most advanced warships would be considered pleasure crafts in our society." He turned slowly, looking at each human representative. "Why should we treat you as equals when you are clearly children playing at warfare?" Kate stepped forward. "Children grow up, Ambassador." Nick Svelor smiled coldly. "Not all of them. Some never get the chance." The threat hung in the air. No one spoke as the ambassador left. 2 days later, the Hegemony began military exercises in Earth's orbit. Their warships fired weapons that could destroy entire cities. They made sure Earth's satellites captured everything. They wanted humans to see their power. Admiral Carter watched the display from Space Command. His officers sat in silence as alien weapons tore through space. "They're showing off," said his second-in-command. Carter nodded. "People who need to show off are often hiding something." Later that night, Carter met with General Wells and Commander Wilson in a secure room deep underground. No signals could get in or out. No one could listen to their conversation. "They're planning something," Wilson said. "Their ships are positioning around key resource locations. They've increased troop presence in their embassy." Wells studied the maps on the table. "How long until they make their move?" "A month. Maybe less." Carter looked at both women. "Then it's time to accelerate our plans. Start moving our hidden ships closer. I want them ready." In space, far from Earth, the U.S. Shadowhawk drifted silently. Inside, Captain Ryan Bennett reviewed their new orders. His crew waited for his response. "We're going behind enemy lines," he told them. "Command wants eyes on their main military base in the Proxima system." Lieutenant Maria Garcia, his tactical officer, looked concerned. "That's deep in their territory, sir." "That's why they're sending us," Ryan said. "We're the most advanced stealth ship in the fleet." Dr. Chris Taylor, the science officer, studied the mission details. 3 weeks of complete observation. No communication with Earth. "Can we do it?" Ryan asked his crew. They nodded without hesitation. The ship prepared to jump to its first checkpoint. Before they left, Ryan looked at Earth through the view screen. It looked so small and vulnerable from here. The aliens thought they knew everything about humanity's capabilities. They were about to learn how wrong they were. In the Nevada facility, General Wells received one last message from the Shadowhawk before it went silent. "Operation Looking Glass commencing. Shadowhawk dark until mission complete." Wells sent back a simple reply. Good hunting. The first major move in Earth's secret plan had begun. While the hegemony flexed their muscles in orbit, humanity's invisible ships were spreading through space, gathering intelligence that would change everything. Wells looked at the star map showing the Shadowhawk's course. "Show them what we can do," she whispered. The U.S. Shadowhawk moved silently through space. No radar could see it. No sensors could detect it. To the rest of the galaxy, it did not exist. Captain Ryan Bennett sat in his command chair, watching the stars. His ship had been traveling for 9 days. They had used a series of carefully planned jumps to avoid hegemony patrols. Now they were approaching the Proxima system, home to the largest alien military base in this sector. "Status report," Ryan said quietly. Lieutenant Maria Garcia checked her screens. "Stealth systems at 100%. No signs we've been detected. All sensors recording," added Dr. Chris Taylor from the science station. "We're getting good data on their patrol patterns." Ryan nodded. "Take us in closer. I want detailed scans of their main base." The Shadowhawk glided forward. Through the view screen, they could see dozens of alien warships. Some were small and fast. Others were massive battle platforms, bigger than anything Earth had built. All were armed with weapons that could destroy planets. "So many ships," whispered Maria. "And yet they still don't see us," Ryan reminded her. "Remember that." For 3 days, they observed the base. They recorded ship movements. They intercepted communications. They studied weapon systems and defenses. Every piece of information was stored in special computers, shielded from detection. On the 4th day, they had a close call. "Captain," Maria's voice was urgent but controlled. "Hegemony scout ship changing course. It's heading straight for us." Ryan remained calm. "Hold position. Maintain stealth. Everyone quiet." The scout ship grew larger on their screen. It was moving fast, its sensors sweeping the area. The crew of the Shadowhawk held their breath as it came closer and closer. Then it happened. The scout ship passed right by them, missing their hull by less than 50 meters. It continued on its path, never slowing, never giving any sign that it had detected Earth's spy ship. When it was gone, the bridge crew let out a collective breath. "That was too close," Maria said. Ryan shook his head. "No, that was perfect. Our stealth systems just passed their first real test." Over the next 2 weeks, the Shadowhawk gathered more intelligence than Earth's leaders had dared hope for. They learned about hegemony fleet formations. They discovered weaknesses in their communication systems. Most importantly, they found patterns in their shield technology that might be exploited. On their final day at the base, they witnessed something unexpected. A small alien ship arrived carrying what appeared to be representatives from another species. These aliens were not part of the hegemony. They looked fearful as they were escorted inside. "What do you think that's about?" asked Ryan. Dr. Taylor studied the readings. Based on their body language and the heavy guard, "I'd say they're being forced to cooperate. Maybe paying tribute or signing some kind of treaty." "So the hegemony bullies other species too," Ryan said thoughtfully. "Good to know we're not alone." "Time to head home?" Maria asked. Ryan nodded. "We have what we came for. Let's get this information back to Earth." The Shadowhawk began its careful journey home, jumping from hiding spot to hiding spot, always invisible, always watching. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Wells and her team continued their preparations. The intelligence from the other stealth ships had been valuable, but everyone was waiting for the Shadowhawk's return. It had gone deeper into enemy territory than any other vessel. "Any word?" asked Admiral Carter during their daily meeting. Wells shook her head. "Nothing yet. But no news is good news. If they'd been captured, the hegemony would be parading them in front of us right now." In her office, Wells studied the latest reports from Earth's monitoring stations. The hegemony was getting more aggressive. Their ships were pushing into new areas. Their demands were increasing. "They think we're helpless," she told her officers. "That misconception will be their downfall." One of her aides rushed in with a message. "General, we've received a coded burst transmission. The Shadowhawk has completed its mission and is returning to Earth orbit." Wells smiled. "How soon?" "3 days, Mom." "Good. When they arrive, I want that data analyzed immediately. Tell everyone to prepare for the next phase." Across the solar system, Earth's hidden fleet continued to wait. The ships were fully crewed and ready. Their weapons were primed. Their stealth systems were active. All they needed was the order. And soon, that order would come. 1 year had passed since the aliens first appeared in Earth's skies. In that time, they had changed from visitors to rulers. Each week brought new demands. Each month brought more alien ships. The people of Earth grew angry, but their leaders urged patience. Behind the scenes, plans were being made. The U.S. Shadowhawk had returned with valuable information. Earth's hidden fleet was ready. They just needed the right moment. That moment came sooner than expected. In the early morning, reports came in from the Arctic. Alien ships had landed without permission. They brought mining equipment and armed guards. When asked to leave, they refused. Canadian and Russian forces went to the site. They tried to talk first. When that failed, they showed their weapons. The aliens responded with force. In moments, 37 humans were dead. Many more were injured. The news spread quickly. People around the world watched in horror as footage of the attack played on every screen. For the first time, humans had died at alien hands. An emergency meeting was called at the United Nations. Leaders from every nation gathered to respond. Admiral Carter and Commander Wilson sat with them, their faces grim. The doors opened, and Hegemony Overlord Draz Corvin entered. He was older than Zex Toril, with pale blue skin that had faded to almost white. His silver eyes were cold. He did not wait to be invited to speak. "I understand there was an incident," he said, his voice flat. "Some of your people interfered with a resource-gathering operation." The Canadian Prime Minister stood up, his face red with anger. "Your ships landed in our territory without permission. When asked to leave, they killed our people." Draz Corvin waved a hand dismissively. "The minerals in that region are vital to the hegemony. We do not need permission to take what we require." "Those are sovereign nations," the Russian president said. "You cannot simply." "We can, and we will." Draz Corvin interrupted. "Consider this a lesson in your new reality. The resources of this planet now serve the greater galactic community. Your provincial concerns are irrelevant." Admiral Carter stood up. "And if we refuse to accept this reality?" Draz Corvin looked at him like he was a small child. "Then you will be taught more painful lessons until you learn." The meeting ended in angry shouts. As the human leaders left, they shared looks of silent agreement. The time for patience was over. In a secure room beneath the UN building, Earth's military leaders gathered. General Wells joined by video from Nevada. Her face on the screen was determined. "The line has been crossed," she said. "Are we all in agreement?" One by one, the military leaders nodded. The President of the United States spoke for all of them. "Operation Revelation is authorized. God help us all." Deep in the Nevada facility, General Wells turned to her communications officer. "Send the signal." Laura Scott, a young officer with steady hands, began typing the encrypted message. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. When she finished, she looked up at Wells. "Message ready, Mom." Wells nodded. "Send it." Laura pressed the button. Across the solar system, hidden receivers picked up the signal. The message was simple: Lazarus Protocol authorized. Phase 1 initiated. In secret bases around Earth, pilots and crew rushed to their ships. Some were hidden in underwater bases, others in mountain bunkers. All had been waiting for this moment. In space, the stealth ships that had been watching and waiting began to move. They changed positions, forming a web around the solar system. No one could see them. No one knew they were there. The U.S. Nightwing, commanded by Captain Olivia Scott, moved into position behind Earth's moon. From there, they could see the hegemony's main fleet in orbit. All systems ready, her first officer reported. Weapons charged, stealth systems active. Olivia nodded. Now we wait for the signal. On the U.S. Spectre, Captain Greg Turner prepared his crew. This is what we've trained for, he told them. The aliens think they know all our capabilities. They're about to learn how wrong they are. In the Nevada Command Center, General Wells watched as reports came in from all ships. Everything was proceeding according to plan. All pieces were moving into position. Admiral Carter called from Washington. The hegemony has just announced they're sending a colonization fleet. They'll be here in 3 days. Wells smiled grimly. Perfect timing. By then, we'll be ready to show them what humans are really capable of. The countdown to revelation had begun. 3 days passed quickly. The massive hegemony ship Eternal Dominion arrived in Earth orbit. It was 5 times larger than their first vessel. Behind it came 20 smaller ships. Together, they made up the colonization fleet that would change Earth forever. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, High Commander Zex Toril watched Earth through the main view screen. He had returned to oversee this important step. The blue planet looked peaceful from space. Soon it would be properly organized under hegemony control. The mining operations are expanding as planned, reported an officer. The humans are protesting, but not interfering after the Arctic incident. Zex Toril nodded. And the military situation. Their primitive ships are moving. They appear to be gathering for an attack. The officer's voice held amusement. Should we be concerned? Hardly. Zex Toril said with a laugh. Let them come. It will be a good opportunity to demonstrate our power. Perhaps after we destroy a few of their vessels, they will finally understand their place. On Earth, Admiral Carter stood in Space Command. Around him, officers monitored the movement of Earth's conventional forces. Ships and planes were moving into position. Orbital defense platforms powered up their weapons. It all looked like desperate preparation for a hopeless battle. The hegemony is watching our movements, Carter said. Good. Keep them focused on what they can see. General Wells' face appeared on his private screen. All Phantom Fleet vessels report ready. Admiral, Operation Revelation is set to begin on your order. Carter nodded. It's time to show them who they're really dealing with. He turned to his communications officer. Send the signal. All Earth forces to commence attack pattern Alpha. Across the planet, Earth's visible military forces began to move. Ships launched missiles. Fighter jets took off. Orbital platforms locked onto alien targets. It was a brave show of resistance, but against the hegemony's advanced technology, it seemed futile. On the Eternal Dominion, Zex Toril watched with mild interest. They're actually attacking. How quaint. Should we respond? Asked his second-in-command. Yes. Target their largest vessels and orbital platforms. Let's give them a demonstration of real warfare. Hegemony gunners locked onto Earth's forces. They prepared to fire weapons that could turn military ships into dust. At that moment, Admiral Carter gave the command everyone had been waiting for. All Phantom Fleet vessels, Decloaked, and execute attack pattern Delta. In space, the impossible happened. Ships appeared out of nowhere. One moment, there was empty space. The next, 67 warships materialized around the hegemony fleet. The U.S. Nightwing decloaked directly behind the Eternal Dominion. Its weapons systems locked onto the alien flagship's engines. The U.S. Spectre appeared beside the hegemony's primary weapons platform. 3 more ships surrounded each alien vessel. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, alarms blared. Officers rushed to stations, shouting in confusion. Where did they come from? Zex Toril demanded. How did they get past our sensors? Unknown, Commander. They weren't there, and then they just appeared. Impossible. Check the sensors again. But the sensors were working fine. The human ships had simply been invisible until now. Captain Olivia Scott's voice came through on all hegemony communication channels. Attention hegemony vessels. "This is Captain Scott of the Earth Defense Force. You are surrounded by our stealth fleet. Power down your weapons immediately, or we will open fire." Zex Toril stared at the screen in disbelief. The human ships were unlike anything he had seen before. Their design was alien even to him. Their surfaces seemed to shift and change, making them hard to focus on even now. "This is some trick," he said. "They cannot have such technology. It's impossible." "Sir," his tactical officer's voice shook. "Their weapons are locked on our critical systems. They can see through our shields somehow." For the first time, fear showed on Zex Toril's face. He had dismissed humans as primitives. He had mocked their technology. Now they had revealed capabilities beyond what any newly discovered species should possess. "How?" he whispered. On the bridge of the U.S. Shadowhawk, Captain Ryan Bennett watched the confusion on the alien ships. "They still don't understand what's happening," he told his crew. "Let's make it clearer." The Shadowhawk fired a precision shot that passed through the Eternal Dominion's shields like they weren't there. The beam struck a non-critical area, causing minimal damage but proving their weapons could penetrate alien defenses. Ryan opened a channel to the Hegemony flagship. "This was a warning shot. The next one won't be. You have 1 minute to stand down." All across the solar system, Earth's hidden fleet revealed itself. The balance of power had shifted in an instant. The Hegemony, for the first time in centuries, found themselves outmatched and surrounded. The time for mockery was over. Time seemed to stop as the Hegemony fleet faced their impossible situation. For generations, they had been the strongest power in this part of the galaxy. No species had ever surprised them like this. No primitive world had ever revealed such advanced technology. On the Eternal Dominion, High Commander Zex Toril made the hardest decision of his long life. "Stand down all weapons," he ordered, his voice quiet. "Open a channel to their leaders." The bridge crew obeyed in stunned silence. Moments later, Admiral Carter's face appeared on the main screen. "This is Admiral William Carter of Earth. Do you surrender, Commander?" Zex Toril straightened his back. "The Hegemony does not surrender, but we will cease hostile actions and discuss terms." Carter nodded. "Wise choice. Prepare to receive Captain Bennett and his team. They will ensure your weapons remain powered down." The link ended. Zex Toril turned to his officers. "How did we miss this? How did we not know?" No one had an answer. 20 minutes later, Captain Ryan Bennett and a team of Marines transported onto the Eternal Dominion. They wore special armor that seemed to shift colors with each movement. Their weapons were unlike anything the aliens had seen before. "Your ship is now under our control," Ryan told Zex Toril. "Cooperate, and no one else needs to get hurt." The alien commander looked at the human with new eyes. Gone was the mockery. Gone was the sense of superiority. For the first time, he saw humans as equals, perhaps even as superiors. "How long have you had this technology?" he asked. Ryan smiled slightly. "Long enough. We've been watching you since the day you arrived." Across the solar system, similar scenes played out on other Hegemony vessels. Earth's stealth ships maintained their positions, weapons ready, but no further shots were fired. The battle was over before it truly began. On Earth, people watched in amazement as news spread about the hidden fleet. Cheers broke out in cities around the world. Humans had protected themselves not through brute force, but through patience, secrecy, and superior technology. 1 week later, Admiral Carter led a delegation to the Hegemony's capital world. With him went Dr. Lisa Brown, John Miller, and General Wells. They traveled on the U.S. Shadowhawk, which remained invisible until the last moment. When they decloaked in orbit around the alien homeworld, panic spread through the Hegemony leadership. They had received reports about the incident at Earth, but seeing the stealth technology firsthand was different. In the Grand Council chamber, Admiral Carter presented Earth's terms. First, Earth will join the galactic community as a full and equal member, not as an observer. The Hegemony Council members looked at each other nervously, then nodded. Second, All mining operations on our planet will cease immediately. Any future resource sharing will be negotiated fairly. Again, they nodded. Third, technology exchange will occur on mutual terms. We have things to learn from you, but you also have much to learn from us. The head of the council, an ancient blue-skinned alien named Vex Mora, leaned forward. And if we refused these terms? Carter's expression didn't change. We could have revealed ourselves with an all-out attack. Instead, we chose restraint. Remember that when you consider your response. The message was clear. Earth could have struck without warning. They could have destroyed the hegemony fleet before anyone knew what was happening. Instead, they had shown mercy. The council agreed to the terms. As news spread throughout the galaxy of how the primitive humans had outsmarted the mighty hegemony, other species began to look to Earth with new interest. Some saw potential allies. Others saw the chance for freedom from hegemony control. On the journey home, Captain Bennett and Dr. Claire Nelson watched Earth come into view from the Shadowhawks Bridge. They thought our weakness was our inferior technology, Bennett remarked. They never considered that our strength might be our patience, and our ability to keep a secret, Claire added with a smile. General Wells joined them, looking out at their blue planet growing larger in the view screen. What happens now? Asked Bennett. Now we take our place among the stars, Wells answered. Not as servants or observers, but as equals. Across the galaxy, the balance of power had shifted. Humanity had earned its place not through brute force, but through ingenuity, foresight, and the strategic advantage of being underestimated. The galactic hegemony had mocked Earth. They wouldn't make that mistake again.